The Galactic Concord had watched Earth for 300 years before they decided to make contact. Their observation ships stayed hidden behind the moon, recording everything. They watched humans build cities and tear them down. They watched wars and peace treaties. They watched rockets climb into the sky and satellites spread across orbit like a net of blinking lights. The scientists who studied Earth could not agree on what they were seeing. The planet itself was beautiful from space. Blue oceans covered most of the surface. Green and brown continents spread across the globe. White clouds drifted in lazy patterns. It looked like a paradise world, the kind of place where gentle creatures would evolve and live easy lives. But the data told a different story. Senior Observer Catherall had spent 40 years studying Earth, and she still could not understand how anything survived there. The planet sat in what the Concord called the comfort zone around its star, close enough for liquid water, but far enough to avoid burning. That should have made it safe. Instead, Earth seemed determined to kill everything that lived on it. She reviewed her files for the 100th time. The planet's axis tilted at an angle, creating seasons that swung from freezing to burning. Massive storms formed over the oceans and swept across the land, destroying everything in their path. The ground itself moved, cracking and shifting in earthquakes that leveled cities. Mountains exploded with liquid rock. Waves taller than buildings crashed against shores. Ice ages came and went, covering half the planet in frozen death before retreating again. And that was just the planet. The life forms were even worse. Earth teemed with predators. Creatures with teeth and claws hunted through every environment. Sharks patrolled the oceans. Big cats stalked the grasslands. Bears roamed the forests. Venomous snakes and spiders hid in shadows, waiting to inject poison into anything that came too close. Even the tiny creatures were dangerous. Bacteria and viruses waged invisible wars inside every living thing, killing millions of hosts over the centuries. The humans had evolved in the middle of all this chaos. They had no claws, no fangs, no armor, no venom. Their skin was soft and easily damaged. Their bodies were slow compared to the predators that hunted them. They could not fly or breathe underwater or see in the dark. By every measure the Concord used, they should have gone extinct millions of years ago. Instead, they had conquered their entire planet. Catherall did not understand how. The humans had spread across every continent, adapting to deserts and jungles and frozen wastelands. They had hunted the great predators to near extinction. They had built shelters against the storms and walls against the floods. When their bodies could not handle an environment, they invented tools and clothes and machines that let them survive anyway. The Concord finally voted to make contact when humans launched their first ship beyond their own moon. The vote was not unanimous. Many delegates argued that humanity was too dangerous, too unpredictable, too savage. Others believed that any species capable of surviving Earth deserved a chance to join galactic civilization. Catherall was chosen to lead the first contact mission. She was Volanthi, one of the oldest species in the Concord. Her people had evolved on a gentle world of shallow seas and constant warmth. They were tall and thin, with hollow bones and translucent skin. They were considered wise and patient, perfect for delicate diplomatic work. She was not prepared for Earth. The shuttle landed in a green field outside a human city. Catherall had studied the planet for decades, but nothing had prepared her for actually standing on its surface. The gravity hit her first, pressing down on her hollow bones with brutal force. She had known Earth's gravity was strong, but knowing and feeling were different things. Every step took effort. Her joints ached within minutes. Then came the sun. Even through her environmental suit, she could feel the radiation beating against her skin. The humans walked around under that sun without any protection at all. Their skin darkened in response, a biological adaptation that Volanti could not match. Kethral's kind would blister and burn within an hour of direct exposure. The air was the worst part. Her suit's sensors showed the readings, and she had to check them twice to believe them. The atmosphere was a toxic soup of nitrogen, oxygen, and countless other gases. Billions of microorganisms floated in every breath, bacteria and viruses and fungal spores drifting on the wind. Humans breathed this air constantly. They filled their lungs with microscopic life forms and somehow did not die. The human delegation arrived in simple vehicles that rolled on wheels. They wore no suits, no protection, nothing but thin fabric coverings. Kethral watched them step out into the sunlight and gravity and toxic air as if none of it mattered. The leader was a female named Director Chun. She was short and sturdy, with dark hair and darker eyes. She walked toward Kethral with a smooth confidence that seemed wrong for a creature standing on a death world. When she reached the ambassador, she smiled. Kethral's instinct screamed at her to run. The smile showed teeth, white and flat, but still unmistakably predator teeth. It was a threat display. Her brain insisted. This creature was preparing to bite. Director Chun extended her hand, palm up. Kethral had studied this gesture. It meant the human carried no weapon. A greeting from their violent past when meeting strangers often meant fighting. The fact that they needed such a ritual said everything about their history. Kethral reached out with her own hand, trying to keep her fingers from trembling. Chun's grip was firm and warm. The human's body temperature ran hot, nearly fever levels by Volanti standards. Their metabolisms burned like furnaces, consuming massive amounts of food to fuel their constant activity. "Welcome to Earth," Director Chun said. "We're honored to meet you." Kethral found her voice. "We are honored as well. The Galactic Concord has watched your species with great interest." Chun's smile widened slightly. "We've known you were watching. We were wondering when you'd finally say hello." This surprised Kethral. Human technology should not have been advanced enough to detect Concord observation ships. She made a note to investigate later. Over the following days, Kethral met with human leaders and scientists. She toured their cities and saw their history. She learned about their wars, their diseases, their disasters. She saw records of famines and plagues that killed millions. She saw images of weapons that could destroy entire cities in single blasts. She saw the scars that humans carried, both on their bodies and in their cultures. And she saw how they kept going despite all of it. When her report reached the Concord, the delegates read it in silence. Kethral had summarized her findings in one sentence. "Earth is hell, and humans are the demons who call it home." The Concord voted to open formal relations. They did not do this because they thought humans were friendly. They did it because they were afraid of what might happen if they did not. 3 years after first contact, humanity held a provisional seat on the Galactic Concord. Most species treated them as curiosities. A few treated them as threats. Almost everyone underestimated them. The humans did not seem to mind. They sent diplomats who smiled and nodded and learned every language they encountered. They sent scientists who asked endless questions about technology and biology and physics. They sent traders who bought and sold goods with cheerful enthusiasm. They seemed harmless, almost naive, like children who'd stumbled into an adult gathering. Ambassador Kethral knew better. She had seen Earth. She had felt its gravity crushing her bones and its sun burning her skin. She had breathed its poisoned air and walked among its dangerous wildlife. The humans were not naive. They were simply used to surviving things that would kill anyone else. The Kethmar mining disaster proved her right. Kethmar 7 was a rocky world rich in rare metals. The Concord had been mining it for centuries, digging deep into the planet's crust to extract valuable ores. The work was dangerous but profitable. Thousands of workers lived in underground habitats, spending years at a time in the dark tunnels beneath the surface. The gravity well collapse happened without warning. Deep mining had destabilized the planet's core, creating a cascading failure that sealed hundreds of tunnels in seconds. 400 workers were trapped underground with limited air and no way out. The surface temperature hovered at 60 below zero. The atmosphere was mostly ammonia, poison to almost every species in the Concorde. Emergency response teams mobilized immediately, but they faced an impossible situation. The rescue protocols required environmental conditions within survivable ranges. HFY 7 exceeded every safety parameter. The gravity was 1.7 times standard, enough to crush Volanti bones and exhaust HFY hearts within hours. The cold would freeze most species solid in minutes. The ammonia would eat through standard environmental suits within days. The Concorde's rescue teams refused deployment. It was not cowardice. It was simple mathematics. Sending rescuers to die would not save anyone. The humans volunteered. Commander Sarah Chen stood before the Emergency Council and made her offer in plain terms. Her people could handle the gravity. Earth's gravity was 1.0 standard, which meant HFY 7 was only slightly worse than home. The cold was harsh, but survivable. Humans had evolved through ice ages. They had crossed frozen continents and lived in polar regions for thousands of years. The ammonia was dangerous, but human environmental suits were built to handle hostile atmospheres. Earth had plenty of toxic environments for practice. The council debated for 2 hours. Some argued that sending humans was too risky. Others pointed out that not sending anyone meant 400 certain deaths. In the end, they approved a mission with conditions attached. Human volunteers only. Full hazard acknowledgement. No Concorde responsibility for casualties. Commander Chun accepted the terms without hesitation. She gathered her team and departed within 6 hours. Kethril watched the rescue unfold through orbital cameras. The human ship landed near the collapsed mine entrance in a storm of ammonia snow. 42 humans emerged in heavy suits, carrying equipment and supplies. They moved with purpose, despite the gravity that should have slowed them down. The first day was spent clearing debris and establishing a base camp. The humans worked in shifts, rotating out every 6 hours to rest. Rest meant eating massive amounts of food and then falling into unconsciousness. Sleep, they called it. Most Concorde species found the concept disturbing, a daily brush with death that humans treated as normal. On the second day, they broke through to the first group of survivors. 12 HFY workers huddled in a side tunnel, their air nearly gone. The humans carried them out one by one, moving through collapsed passages that could give way at any moment. The third day brought complications. A secondary collapse trapped a rescue team in a narrow shaft. Commander Chen led the extraction herself, crawling through spaces too small for proper movement. She dislocated her shoulder, forcing through a tight gap. The medical team watched in shock as she simply pushed the joint back into place and kept working. Human bodies were strange in ways that the Concorde was only beginning to understand. They healed from injuries that would cripple other species. Broken bones knit together in weeks. Torn muscles rebuilt themselves stronger than before. Even their minds seemed to adapt to trauma, processing horror and fear and grief without shutting down completely. By the fourth day, the humans had established multiple rescue routes through the collapsed mine. Teams worked around the clock, pausing only for mandatory rest periods. The gravity drained them, but they pushed through. The cold bit at their suits, but they endured. When equipment failed, they improvised with whatever materials they could find. The Concorde observers recorded everything. They watched humans shrug off exhaustion that would have killed Volanti workers. They watched humans laugh and joke in conditions that should have broken their spirits. They watched humans comfort dying colleagues with gentle words while still working to save others. On the 17th day, the humans found the main group of survivors. 250 workers had sealed themselves in a storage chamber, rationing air and food while waiting for rescue. The humans broke through the barrier and began evacuation immediately. The process took another week. The tunnels were unstable. Every rescue run risked new collapses. The humans lost 2 of their own on the 19th day when a ceiling gave way without warning. The team recovered the bodies, held a brief memorial, and went back to work. Commander Chun was the last human to leave the mine. She carried a wounded Tethkai engineer on her shoulders, walking through the ammonia snow like it was a gentle spring rain. Her suit was patched in a dozen places. Her body was bruised and battered. She had not slept properly in 3 days. When she reached the ship, she set the engineer down carefully and turned to face the orbital cameras. She knew the Concorde was watching. She raised one hand in a gesture that humans used for greeting and farewell. 387 lives saved. 2 humans lost. The mathematics of the mission were brutal but clear. Without human intervention, everyone would have died. The rescue changed how the Concorde saw humanity. They were not just curiosities or potential threats. They were something else entirely, a species forged by a world that made Kethmer 7 look like a vacation destination. They did not fear death. They had grown up alongside it. They did not break under pressure. They had evolved to handle pressure that would crush anyone else. Ambassador Kethral submitted a formal recommendation to upgrade humanity's status from provisional member to full ally. The Council approved it unanimously. They did not do this out of gratitude. They did it because they finally understood what they were dealing with. Humans were survivors. That simple fact made them more valuable than any other species in the Concorde. Whatever challenges the galaxy threw at them, humans would find a way through. They always had. The Vrix hegemony had conquered 63 species in 400 years. Their empire stretched across 1,000 star systems, built on a simple philosophy: the strong rule, the weak serve. They believed this was the natural order of things, proven by centuries of victory. When their war fleets entered Concorde space, they expected quick surrender. Every species they had conquered followed the same pattern. First came shock, then fear, then negotiation, then submission. The Vrix were patient. They could wait for the inevitable. They had studied the Concorde carefully. They knew the Volanti were fragile diplomats. They knew the Tethkai were skilled engineers but poor fighters. They knew a dozen other species with a dozen other weaknesses. They cataloged everything, built their strategies, calculated their acceptable losses. They had not adequately studied the humans. The first battle came at Arcturus Station, a trade hub on the edge of Concorde territory. The station housed 50,000 civilians from a dozen species. It had minimal defenses, a handful of patrol ships, no real military presence. It should have fallen in hours. Admiral Jackson Torres disagreed. Torres was not supposed to be at Arcturus Station. His fleet was 3 days away, responding to a different emergency. When the Vrix arrived, he had only his personal ship and whatever forces the station could muster. This amounted to 12 patrol vessels and 300 human marines. The Vrix commander, a massive warrior named Krath, sent the standard demand: surrender the station and its people would be spared. Resist and everyone would die. It was the same offer the hegemony always made. It always worked. Taurus sent back a single word: no. Krath was not concerned. He had 30 warships against 12 patrol vessels. His soldiers numbered in the thousands. The mathematics were simple. He ordered his fleet to advance. The first surprise came when the human patrol ships did not retreat. They moved forward instead, directly into the Vrix formation. They were smaller and weaker, but they were also faster and more maneuverable. They darted between the massive hegemony vessels, firing at weak points and then vanishing before return fire could connect. The second surprise came when the humans began using tactics that made no sense. One patrol ship deliberately crashed into a Vrix destroyer's engines, crippling both vessels. The human crew evacuated at the last moment, but several did not make it. They had sacrificed themselves to take out a ship 10 times their size. The Vrix did not understand. Their culture valued survival above all else. A warrior who died in battle was a warrior who could not fight again. The concept of deliberate sacrifice confused them. Why would anyone choose death? The battle for the station itself was worse. Torres evacuated the civilian population through emergency shuttles while his Marines prepared defenses. They had limited ammunition and fewer weapons. What they had was knowledge of the station systems and a willingness to use every advantage. When the Vrix boarding parties arrived, they expected frightened defenders waiting to surrender. Instead, they found corridors rigged with traps. Airlocks opened without warning, venting attackers into space. Gravity generators fluctuated randomly, crushing soldiers one moment and leaving them floating helplessly the next. Temperature controls went haywire, freezing some sections while cooking others. The humans had turned the station into a weapon. The fighting moved from section to section over days, then weeks. The Vrix had numbers, but the humans had something else. They would not stop. They fought when wounded. They fought when exhausted. They fought when they should have been dead. Private Maria Santos became famous after the battle. She held a corridor junction for 6 hours with a broken arm and depleted ammunition. When her rifle ran dry, she used a metal pipe. When the pipe bent, she used her fists. She killed 9 Vrix soldiers before reinforcements arrived. She survived, though nobody understood how. Sergeant Thomas Okonkwo led his squad into a reactor room to prevent the Vrix from overloading the core. The radiation would have killed any other species in minutes. Okonkwo's squad held the room for 3 hours. 4 of them died from exposure. The other 8 completed the mission. They knew the cost going in. They went anyway. The stories spread through the hegemony fleet. The humans were not just fighting. They were choosing to die in ways that maximized damage to their enemies. Every fallen human took Vrix with them. Every defensive position cost more than it should have. The mathematics of conquest were breaking down. Krath ordered a full assault on the command center. His remaining forces numbered over 2,000. The humans had fewer than 100 Marines left. It should have been a slaughter. Admiral Torres met them personally. He was wounded, his uniform torn and bloody, but he stood at the front of his remaining soldiers with a rifle in his hands. He did not give speeches. He did not offer terms. He simply raised his weapon and fired. The battle lasted 8 hours. When it ended, the command center was a ruin of shattered consoles and broken bodies. 19 humans were still alive. They had killed over 500 Vrix soldiers. The floor was covered in the dead. Krath survived. He stared at the humans through the smoke and debris, trying to understand what he was seeing. These creatures should have surrendered. They should have run. They should have begged for mercy. Instead, they had stood their ground against impossible odds and nearly won. He ordered the retreat. The Vrix fleet withdrew from Arcturus Station as the Concorde relief force arrived. They had lost half their ships and a third of their soldiers. They had gained nothing. For the first time in 400 years, the hegemony had been stopped. The war continued for another 2 years. The Vrix tried different tactics and different targets. Nothing worked. The humans were everywhere, volunteering for the most dangerous missions, taking positions that no other species would hold. They did not win every battle. They did not need to. They simply refused to stop fighting. The hegemony had built its empire on the assumption that all species valued survival above all else. They could not conquer a species that was willing to die rather than submit. They could not break an enemy that had already lived through hell. The peace treaty was signed on a neutral station. Krath represented the hegemony. Torres represented the humans. The Vrix commander asked one question before signing. How do you do it? How do you keep fighting when there is no hope? Torres considered the question. He thought about Earth, about ice ages and predators and plagues. He thought about his ancestors who had survived everything their planet threw at them. He thought about the Marines who had died at Arcturus Station, laughing and joking even as their world collapsed around them. Hope has nothing to do with it, he said. We just don't know how to quit. Krath signed the treaty. The hegemony's expansion ended that day. They had finally met something they could not conquer, a species that had already conquered hell itself. 10 years after the Hegemony War, the Galactic Concord convened a special assembly. Representatives from 147 species gathered in the Great Hall of the Council Station, filling seats that rose in tiers toward a domed ceiling of transparent crystal. Stars glittered beyond the glass, a reminder of the vast galaxy they were trying to govern together. The topic was humanity. It always seemed to be humanity these days. Ambassador Kethrol, now elderly by Volanthi standards, took the speaker's platform first. She had been studying humans longer than anyone else in the Concord. She had watched them arrive as primitives and grow into one of the most influential species in the galaxy. She understood them better than most, which meant she understood how little anyone really understood them at all. I have prepared a presentation, she said. It concerns the biological and psychological characteristics of the human species. I ask that you listen with open minds. What I am about to share may disturb you. The hall fell silent. Kethrol activated the display systems, and a holographic image of Earth appeared above the assembly. This is the human homeworld. From space, it appears hospitable. Blue water, green continents, breathable atmosphere. Our initial surveys classified it as a potential paradise. We were wrong. The image shifted to show data streams and biological readouts. Earth's gravity is 1.0 standard by our measurement. This is the baseline we use for all calculations. What we did not initially appreciate is that this gravity represents a crushing force by most species standards. Volanthi bodies would break under sustained exposure. Tethkai hearts would fail within days. Most Concord species cannot survive on the human homeworld without mechanical assistance. She let that sink in before continuing. The atmosphere is roughly 21% oxygen. This concentration would poison most species over time. Humans breathe it constantly. Their blood carries this oxygen throughout their bodies at levels that would cause cellular damage in other life forms. They have adapted to survive what would kill us. Their sun bombards the surface with radiation that would blind and burn most Concord species within hours. Humans evolved melanin in their skin to absorb this radiation. Some humans deliberately expose themselves to additional sunlight for aesthetic purposes. They call this tanning. A murmur ran through the assembly. The idea of voluntarily seeking radiation exposure seemed insane. Their planet experiences constant geological and atmospheric violence. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, hurricanes, tsunamis, ice ages. These events have shaped human evolution. They do not merely survive disasters. They expect them. Their cultures include preparation for catastrophe as a normal part of life. The holographic display changed to show microscopic images. Perhaps most disturbing is their relationship with microorganisms. Billions of bacteria, viruses, and fungi exist within and around every human being. Their bodies are battlegrounds where microscopic wars rage constantly. A human immune system destroys millions of potential threats every day. When it fails, diseases can kill millions of humans in what they call plagues. They have experienced many such events throughout their history and continue to exist regardless. She paused to gather herself. The next part was difficult, even after all these years. Humans evolved as persistent predators. They did not have claws or venom or great speed. Instead, they developed the ability to track prey over vast distances and simply follow until the target collapsed from exhaustion. They can walk and run for hours without stopping. Their bodies cool themselves through sweating, a process that allows continuous exertion and heat that would incapacitate other species. They did not catch their food through superior strength. They caught it by refusing to stop. This persistence defines them. It appears in everything they do. Their scientists will work on problems for decades. Their artists will practice skills for lifetimes. Their soldiers will fight long after logic says they should surrender. They have a saying, "Where there is a will, there is a way." This is not motivational rhetoric to them. It is a statement of biological fact. Kethril deactivated the display and faced the assembly directly. "You have all heard stories from the Hegemony War. You know, humans will sacrifice themselves for others. You know, they continue fighting when victory seems impossible. What you may not understand is why. Earth did not create a species of suicidal warriors. It created a species that had to make impossible choices every day just to survive. Do you run from the predator or stand your ground? Do you share food with your tribe or keep it for yourself? Do you risk death crossing the frozen mountains or stay and starve? Humans evolved to make these calculations constantly. They weigh risk and reward with every decision. They are not fearless. They feel fear as strongly as any species. But they have learned to act despite fear, to function while afraid, to choose dangerous paths when necessary. This is what makes them valuable to the Concord. This is also what makes them dangerous. She stepped back from the platform. A Tethkai scientist took her place, adding technical details about human biology. He explained how human bones grew stronger under stress, how their muscles rebuilt themselves after damage, how their neural pathways could reorganize after injury. He described the human capacity for learning and adaptation, their ability to master new skills throughout their entire lives. Avrick's observer spoke next. He had served under Commander Krath during the war and had witnessed human soldiers in combat. His testimony was brief but powerful. "We believed that all species valued survival above all else," he said. "The humans taught us otherwise. They value something more. They call it duty or honor or love. These concepts override their survival instincts. A human will die for family, for friends, for strangers, for abstract principles. We could not defeat them because we could not find what they truly feared losing. They had already accepted loss. They fought for what remained." The assembly continued for 3 days. Experts testified about human culture, history, psychology, and potential. Delegates asked questions and debated implications. The central issue was clear. What should the Concord do about humanity? Some advocated for restrictions. Humans were too dangerous to be given full access to galactic technology and politics. Their history of violence and warfare suggested they could not be trusted with power. Others argued the opposite. Humans had proven themselves in the Hegemony War. They had saved lives at Kethmar 7. They had shared technology and knowledge freely with any species that asked. Their potential value as allies far outweighed the risks they posed. Ambassador Kethril gave the final statement. "I have studied humans for 60 years. I have walked on their planet, breathed their air, felt their sun on my skin. I have watched them laugh in the face of death and weep over fallen comrades. I have seen them at their worst and their best. They are not perfect. Their history is filled with horror, cruelty, and suffering. They have committed terrible acts against each other and against their world. But they have also shown remarkable capacity for growth, for compassion, for change. Earth made them strong through suffering. The same pressures that created their dangerous qualities also created their greatest virtues. Loyalty, courage, resilience, creativity. These traits evolve together. You cannot have one without the other. The question before this assembly is whether we trust humans enough to stand beside them as equals. I say we must, not because they have earned it through kindness or peace. They have not. We must trust them because the galaxy is vast and dangerous, and when the next great threat emerges, we will meet allies who do not know how to quit. Earth is hell. The humans adapted to it. Whatever darkness awaits us in the unknown regions of space, I want them standing with us when we face it. The vote was held the following day. 147 species cast their decisions. The result was not unanimous, but the majority was clear. Humanity was granted full membership in the Galactic Concord. They would have equal voice in all councils, equal access to all technology, equal responsibility for collective defense. They were no longer curiosities or probationary members or potential threats. They were partners. The human delegation received the news with typical restraint. Their ambassador, a woman named Director Chen, accepted the decision with a simple nod. She had been the first human to shake hands with Ambassador Kethril all those years ago. Now she stood in the great hall of the council station as an equal among the stars. "Thank you for this honor," she said. "We will try to be worthy of it." Kethril watched her old friend and thought about everything that had led to this moment. Centuries of evolution on a death world. First contact with a galaxy that feared them. War against an empire that thought them easy prey. Sacrifice after sacrifice, proving that humans were more than the sum of their violent history. The galaxy had many dangers yet to face. Unknown regions waited to be explored. Ancient threats slumbered in the darkness between stars. New challenges would emerge that no one could predict. When those challenges came, the Concord would not face them alone. They would have humanity beside them, a species born in hell and unafraid of whatever came next. It was not a comfortable alliance. It was not a peaceful one. But it was strong, and in a dangerous galaxy, strength was what mattered most.